Giving Pittsburgh a better alternative. Giving Pittsburgh.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Pittsburgh Current Podcast. I am Pittsburgh editor and publisher Charlie Deitch, live from my fake studio backdrop, as you can see, from my home, still in quarantine. I don't know. Although we're in stage yellow, I'm still a little cautious about where we're going and who I want to be around to touch and so forth. So check out our new issue this week of the Pittsburgh Current. We apparently have a very controversial cover. I didn't know this until after we did it, but we actually have a cover story on Bret Michaels, the former lead singer of Poison. He born in Butler, PA, grew up in central Pennsylvania. But man, people really have strong opinions about his lineage and about Bret in general. But check it out. I found he was a very nice guy, and I think he does a lot of philanthropic stuff that I think is worth taking a look at. Anyway, he's got a new book out, so you can check that out. But on the more serious front, we've got a few stories this week. In the issue, you can find a story on negative campaigning against Pennsylvania State Rep Summer Lee and her bid for re-election. She's going up against Chris Rowland, a candidate who is backed by the county executive Rich Fitzgerald and some labor money. As you know, Summer is the progressive in terms of her politics and working for marginalized communities. So there have been some advertising in that race. It's a little bit suspect. So we cover that. Also, on the website from the last 3 or 4 days, we have the story on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette looking to offer buyouts to its employees in an effort to cut 20% of its newsroom. We have all that and much more online at pittsburghcurrent.com. You can also sign up to have that issue sent to your inbox every week. And I want to take a minute just to say thank you to everyone who responded last week when we basically said, we love doing this and we want to continue doing this, but quite frankly, we're running out of money. A lot of people answered the call, and we've got enough, so far to keep us going for this week into the next. And so honestly, for a lot of small businesses, it's a week by week basis. So we appreciate you. If you'd like to donate, Jake will put the information up here on the screen, I'm sure. Anyway, just want to say that we really appreciate it. We'll have some other announcements later today, I think, on some things that are happening that will also help us along. So our guest today is Krish Mohan, a nationally touring Pittsburgh-based stand-up comedian who brings his unique brand of comedy to talk about socio-political issues like organized religion, late-stage capitalism, the class system, along with stories about India in a brand new stand-up comedy album, Politely Angry, set for a June 1st release. He's also got a virtual live show coming up this Friday, May 22nd at 9 p.m. We're going to talk about all of that. Krish, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Charlie. Appreciate it.
So Friday is a virtual live show.
Yes.
What's the pandemic been like for? Because if you think about, artists and people who perform have really the people that have gotten just smacked in the face over and over again by this pandemic.
Yeah, it's I was actually on the tail end of the last tour that I did, which was like a month-long tour. So I kind of got lucky and I skated by that tour and only had one show canceled because of the pandemic.
That's good.
So and then following that, though, it was just like week after week after week, we just were canceling shows, which included the album recording shows. So plan B was just use a couple, like I record everything on my phone.
Sure.
So just kind of mastering and engineering through that. So right now I'm looking at least 6 months of no touring. And that's kind of what a lot of touring performers are looking at. And just a lot of like venues and performers in general are looking at is is at least 6 months of just closed doors, nothing going on. And if you're a bar that does stuff that's kind of a little bit different because you can still do the carry out delivery kind of stuff. But if you're specifically just a venue, your doors are pretty much closed,
Right.
and you have to kind of adapt to the situation. And as far as I can see, I mean, a lot of artists have adapted to the situation. Like doing these virtual shows
Mhm.
is one way of adapting. I've seen a lot of musicians do like weekly concerts
Mhm.
and kind of challenge themselves to either write a new song or learn a cover or something along those lines, which is really cool to see. Like the arts community kind of coming together and adapting and like supporting each other through very uncertain times
Right.
because nobody has any idea.
Well, what do you? Well, first of all, before I say that, the live shows that you do, what's the dynamic like? So you're on a platform. There's like Zoom, I assume.
Yeah.
So do you have the live audience sort of filtered in, or are they muted? And how does that work in terms of the dynamic of? I mean, because I'm sure a lot of what you do as a comedian is playing off what the audience gives you back. So what is that dynamic like?
Yeah, actually, I had to talk to my friend Ron Placone, who's another a Pittsburgh native that lives in Los Angeles, and Ron's been doing some of these live shows with another comic named Graham Elwood. So me and him were talking about it, and basically, it is over Zoom, and you have people purchase tickets, and an hour before the show, you email them like the login information and the
Yeah.
password and stuff just to make sure that it's secure. And the way that I do it, usually there's like anywhere from like 15 to 20 people in the virtual showroom,
Mhm.
so to speak. And I just let them know, like, hey, keep an eye on, who's got their mic on, and every 10 or 15 minutes, rotate in and out so other people can, if you want to, because I know some people are like, not vocal laughers. Like they
Right.
enjoy the show, but they don't laugh
Mhm.
out loud, which is in a live setting is just a nightmare for a comedian
Right.
because you're like, I can see you enjoying, but there's no noise coming out of your face, and that's terrifying. And it's not validating me enough.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's
uh,
got to be worse than the hecklers because they're kind of taking a free ride. They're enjoying themselves, but they're not showing the
yeah,
love.
yeah,
Freeloaders.
yeah. Which I mean, it's one of those things because they're the ones that'll come up after the show and they'll sit down and talk with you for like 2 hours, and you're like,
Mhm.
"This is great. Where was all of this during the show?"
Right.
But so I just asked them to like, hey, keep an eye on who's got their mic on, and for the most part, the audience kind of polices themselves.
Nice.
They're the I think I'm I'm kind of lucky enough to have a group of people that are very cool and very kind to each other. So the last show that I did was on May 8th, which was like the inaugural show, the official inaugural show, and it went really well. We didn't really have any like hiccups or anything in terms of audio feedback or anything like that. So, but it's still a learning process. Every so often, you run into like a weird glitch, and you're like, "Oh, I didn't think that'd be a problem."
Yeah.
Uh, and you kind of have to figure it out on the fly. So this is, I mean, it's kind of the closest thing to doing a live performance that we have right now, um, because of the current condition and beyond it too, because even if we, like let's say in August, everything kind of is, the curves flattened, we have some kind of a treatment plan in place or something along those lines, and people do feel comfortable going back out. I don't think live events are going to be the first thing that people are going to want to
Right.
spend their money on, because there is like a backlog of rents, and Comcast isn't
Right.
really like freezing payments or
Right.
anything, right? Like
Yeah.
they're still trying to make billions more dollars
Right.
because that's what Comcast does.
Yeah. But you got to watch TV. What else are you gonna do? So you got to pay that Comcast.
Right, right. So I think they're going to take care of bills first, and then come back to the entertainment aspect, going out to the bars and all that sort of stuff. So And I think people want to support that sort of stuff. Like they are eager to support it. But I don't think that's going to be the forefront of it. So I think, even if we come out of this in August, there's going to be a month, maybe 2 months, 3 months of slowly people coming back to kind of support their small businesses, to support their local artists and things of that sort. So doing the virtual shows might kind of be the big thing for 2020
Right.
in terms of artists. So yeah.
What do you think about how we're starting the economy is starting to open up? It's you've got different levels of it. You've got the local level, then you've got the state level, which has been slow and measured, although maybe a little too much in the dark, in my opinion, of some of those plans. But then you've got the national response, which is just insane. Obviously our president wants the economy opened up as soon as possible. What do you think about, how do you feel about the COVID response as we've seen it, and what about this idea now that people are starting to open up? How does that, where do you stand on that?
I think without really, I've been saying this since the start, is without a treatment plan and an economic plan that doesn't involve more trillions to the banks and the or reopening becomes kind of a moot point. You got to have a treatment plan in place, because we're looking at, I think, like the closest projection is like a year to a vaccine. Which is like, you can't have people just sit in their homes. Like I go for walks around my neighborhood and stuff, and everybody's pretty cordial. If we pass each other, either we put our mask back on, or I move over to the side or whatever,
Right.
and that's all fine. But how long can you really ask people to do that?
Right.
So on a national level, I think both parties have failed pretty abysmally in coming up with a plan to help people, just regular average working class people. They're not. I mean, they put like OSHA or they were trying to enforce OSHA regulations, but none of that has happened. Right. Like Nancy Pelosi was like, "Oh, we have these rules where corporations can't screw over the worker. We haven't done anything, but they're there. That's nice." It's like, that's not. What are you talking about? And then you have the other side of it, where you have Mitch McConnell, who I think is probably more dangerous than anybody in the White House right now, because he just blocks any sort of progressive bill that comes through and won't even let people vote on it.
Right.
This dude is specifically looking to win and specifically looking to make money, much like all of the CEOs during this pandemic. And then you do have the White House on the national level, who, at first, I was very surprised. Within the first week of all the stay-at-home orders and everything, like Steve Mnuchin came out and said maybe we should be giving people $1,000 a month.
Right.
And I was like, holy crap! Is that a Republican advocating for universal basic? Like, I never thought that'd be a thing.
Right. Right.
But none of that came to fruition. It ended up being more of like these mainstream corporate candidates, either Democrat or Republican, kind of making these platitudes.
Right.
And then you had everything on the state level, where the states were like, hey, we're trying to, I think a lot of governors were scared, and rightfully so, but they were kind of making platitude arguments as well. But they didn't, I mean, like, we've never faced anything like this. And for a federal government to say, well, the states can figure it out. Well, everybody's going to have a different response to it. So it's just chaos.
Right. So you tour nationally. So what if you get a call next week from, the Ha Ha Hole in Pittsburgh, Alabama, to come down and do a show? I mean, so what do you, because other states are opening up. So how are you going to respond to that? And as you talked about, a lot of people are doing these virtual shows and trying to find other ways to get their art out.
Yeah.
But if that opportunity starts to present itself to come and play before a live audience for, probably more money than you would make in a virtual show, how do you handle that? How do you balance? I mean, I think for yourself, I think I probably kind of understand the answer because I've listened to your comedy before. But what about? I think that's kind of a danger, that we're kind of all on this rolling cycle of and rolling levels of how we're opening up.
Yeah, I've actually been talking to a couple of other touring comedians that I've been in touch with throughout this time, and one of my friends, he's in Florida right now, and said he got a gig offer in Texas for like the first week of June or something,
Wow.
and yeah, he was like, No."
Right.
Uh, let's say that even we weren't in a pandemic, if I can't book a tour to
Right.
come out and do this show, to drive 6, 7 hours to come
Right.
do this show for $100 or $200 or whatever it is, it's just not worth it on on a financial level.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's like nobody, it's not in good conscience for me to ask somebody to come and validate my ego,
Right.
you know, because I wanted, I got a really, I got a hot five on uh you know, cake or something. It doesn't, like, it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
there's a different way that you can go about it. Just on a conscience level, I don't think I could do it because I don't want to. It's just not a risk I'm willing to have people take
Mm.
to come out and watch a comedy show. And I think most of the venues that I've been in contact with are kind of feeling the same way. You know, Virginia's opening back up, and there's a great venue that I've worked with called the Venue on the 35th,
Mhm.
and we were talking, and he basically said, "No, we're going to keep our doors closed until we kind of know, and until we feel safe and our audience feels safe,
Right.
because we can't put them in a situation where they come in, and even if they cut their capacity um, to half, it's just not something that they're
Right.
willing to risk."
And are they going to
Um,
want to pay you for a full room when you're only going to get half a room? I mean, those are other
right.
considerations that you guys would have to deal with in the future as well.
Yeah, and it kind of becomes that if you are going to kind of open up and do live events and things of that sort. I know there's some outdoor events happening around the
Mhm.
country. I've seen some things pop up for that, and I think that's fine because at that point you can have people wearing masks. It's a lot easier to
Right.
socially distance when you're, in a park or something like that. But when you're kind of crammed in a space, that's kind of when we've seen that this virus really acts up. That's
Mhm.
that's how it spreads a lot
Right.
quicker, is through AC in confined spaces, and things of that sort. Like, it's a lot harder for, and it kind of makes sense, right? Like, that's kind of like the science of it is, it's a lot harder for this thing to spread when you're outside
Right.
in clear open spaces with 70-degree weather and the sun
Right.
shining and all that,
Yeah.
than it is inside of a house where there's 6 or 7 people, and even if one person has, it's like, okay, we got to really be cautious and you make sure everything is sanitized and all that. So in terms of that, I mean, that's kind of what a venue would have to do. And if it's a small business venue, which is primarily the venues that I work with, the staffing for that is a nightmare. Like, you have to have a cleaning crew involved.
Right.
You have to, like, check in people at the door, make sure they have masks on, and then what do you do when people are like, "Oh, it's my right not to have a mask."
Right.
Do you kick them out? Do you still, it becomes this major challenge. So it's a lot more convenient, um, on all fronts for small businesses right now to just say, no, we're not going to open up, despite what the
Yeah.
states say.
What do you think
And
about that? I mean, there have been. I don't mean to laugh because it's really
no,
like
no, yeah.
a ridiculously serious situation about people wearing masks. I mean, there have been a security guard was shot and killed at a Dollar General because he asked a woman to put her mask on, and there have been other acts of sort of violence against people who are asked to put masks on. What is it? What is it like? What do you think the mindset is that because we've seen these reopen America, reopen Pennsylvania protests that have brought out the armed militia and what do you make of all this? Why is it that I don't know. It's there are so many people have their rights violated every day in this country, but it's almost not until like one
Right.
thing like white America is asked to do one thing, and it's let's grab the guns, go downtown.
Yeah, so I think it's all those lockdown protesters.
Yeah.
It's an extremely misguided reaction. I get what they're saying. Like, I get it, but I also think it's extremely misguided to, like, go out there and be like, "Oh, my rights are being violated because I have to wear a mask for the safety of others," right?
Right.
Like, even me, it was just like, when it first happened, I was just like, "Oh, geez." Like really, like this is where we're at. And then it's like, oh, okay, like I don't want to go to a grocery store and put anybody in danger to buy my ice cream or whatever the hell I'm buying, right? Like it's just I think it's common courtesy. And like I said, when I go for walks, if people kind of pass each other, we put the masks on and then we take them off when there's nobody around. It's it's just a misguided reaction based out of fear to
Right.
me. Is these people are very scared that their livelihoods are being taken away,
Sure.
and that's very nerve-wracking, to anybody.
Right.
Like, especially, coming from the entertainment world where we might not see a live show
Right.
till, like, January of next year.
Right.
It's a really scary thing,
Yeah.
and I totally get it, but at the end of the day, it becomes like, we don't know anything about this virus. There is so much information that we just don't know. Let's just be a little bit more cautious about it. um, the militias coming out with their guns
Right.
was so bizarre to me,
Yeah.
because in my head I was like, "What are you gonna do? Shoot the virus? Like it
Right.
doesn't
Right.
like it doesn't care about your guns."
Yeah,
Like the
right.
last thing it cares about is your Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, I love the little round ball with with the golf tees coming out with the COVID
Right.
virus. It's just like,
Yeah, it's just like, what do you,
that's it. We're gone. We're leaving. That's it.
yeah, I was just like, why are you bringing your guns to this? What is the point? I think there was it was I watched a coverage of like local news in Michigan and
Mhm.
local news in Pittsburgh, and both of them kind of had the same response. They were just like, "Hey, why did you bring your guns to this protest?" And they were just like, "Why not?" And I was like, "All right."
Right.
Like
could you
I don't know what to say to that.
Right. Exactly. But could you imagine, like, if after Antoine Rose was killed, could you imagine if
Oh man.
those protest groups had brought, and I covered all of those protests. Could you imagine if the African American community came out to protest the death of an unarmed black man? Could you imagine if they were armed, what the response would be? It's not.
Right. I think every Republican and everybody on Fox News would be calling them domestic terrorists for doing
Right.
that, right? But these are just patriots. And
Right.
I want to bring this up too. Is it when you said, like, oh, our rights are being stopped? They are being stopped all the time. No, none of these lockdown protesters were out in front of Capitol Hill when the Patriot Act was signed.
Right.
And then recently, when it was brought back with even more provisions, when the Senate voted to basically say, hey, the FBI can go in and look at your web browser history and data and make a decision without your consent, without a warrant, none of those protesters were out there going, this is about my rights. This is about, when Edward Snowden revealed that the NSA is basically using our phones to collect data and spy on us.
Right.
None of them were out there, right?
Right.
Like Vault 7 revealed by WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. Same thing. Nobody's out there,
Right.
but it's like you can't get a haircut. And they're like, we got to, it's like I can't go and shop at a Target for whatever I want and I got to wear a mask, and it's this mild 10-second inconvenience, and they're out. It's completely misguided, and it's just like, well, if you're really about rights, where are you on supporting all of these whistleblowers?
Right.
Why aren't you pushing back against Republicans doing that? Right? If it is really about your rights, where are you when the state of Georgia makes a bill that prevents a woman from letting her choose what she wants to do with her body, like that's trampling on her rights? So it becomes very misguided, and it becomes very hypocritical one way, or like to say one way or the other. It becomes really selective of which rights you want to fight for and which rights you don't.
Yeah, it's amazing how Republicans can, depending on who the president is or who the leaders are at the time who enacted these bills. And after 9/11, when the Patriot Act was brought into effect, it was all, wouldn't you rather give up some of your rights and be safer than risk this again? And it's just the ability to rationalize in the situation of your choosing is pretty amazing. It's pretty astonishing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's the thing, is that's always been the argument when it comes down to it. When it comes down to the Fourth Amendment, is they're always like, oh, well, it's about safety, so it's okay to violate your rights. because we're trying to keep you safe. And
Right.
most people just kind of go along with it because they're like, I want to be safe. I want my country to be safe. When realistically, like since 9/11, there's never been any domestic attack. Like all the domestic attacks have come from like, people that have been disgruntled
Mhm.
state of things. Like all of the mass shootings that we've seen have all been people that are disgruntled with the state of things, and they took drastic measures,
Yeah.
unfortunate, terrible, drastic measures, right? But it's like nobody, nobody calls that out,
Right.
and is like, oh well, let's really look at the root cause of all of this, and they just kind of sidestep it. Where it's like, where was the Patriot Act in order to solve that case, in order to try to figure that out? Isn't that the point of the? Isn't that why it was put into place?
Right.
And they're like, yeah, no, we're just gonna kind of tell Julian Assange to die in a prison.
Yeah.
That's
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Chelsea Manning. These are the kinds of things that they're traitors to our country, and it's insane. So talk a little bit about the live show. So this is, I mean, obviously this isn't, as we talked about, this isn't going into a comedy club. So how do you prepare for these shows? Does it change your writing any? And tell us a little bit about how these shows sort of operate, because you're doing some different things, right?
Yeah, so each show is going to be about 75% different, just based on some of it is going to be based on like current events, but I am trying to talk about more broad general ideas,
Right.
Like talking about the labor movement, the history of the labor movement, things that we don't hear about normally in kind of corporate mainstream media, talking about ideas that you don't normally hear in that, but also kind of touching on some current events news, because it's hard not to talk about the elephant in the room, right?
Right.
It's just it's something that's constantly happening in front of people all the time. So and it's a nice icebreaker. So kind of changing the show up a little bit each time um, keeps me writing. It keeps the creative juices flowing. It keeps the audience coming back to see what new topics I'm covering. And I'm kind of starting to veer into the direction of creating like a theme for every show. I'm not particularly there yet, but
Yeah.
it is moving in that direction. And in terms of writing, it is a little bit different. My style of comedy um, is more essayistic.
Mhm.
I tend to be very long-winded. I don't know if you can tell, just by me
No,
talking.
you're fine.
Right. um, but I do a lot of storytelling and historical anecdotes and like breaking down ideas and thoughts and things of that sort. And I'm still doing that with these virtual shows. I just can't be as essayistic. I have to be. It's almost like taking like a philosophy course and adding late night jokes to it.
Right. Right.
Like the writing format, it has to be a little bit quicker and a little bit punchier. So it is a new challenge for me to approach these ideas, and make them have these quicker punchlines at the end, because it is a little bit different than what my normal style is. So it has been a little different, and it has had its own challenges, but I like doing that sort of stuff. Like I like challenging myself and kind of pushing my limits and seeing where my limits are. But with that too, I've been able to incorporate like illustrations, video clips. If there's something from
Oh
like
yeah.
like a YouTube thing or an
Mhm.
interview or something where somebody talks about like universal basic income or something. Well, we can watch like a 2-minute clip, and I can kind of stop and have my commentary on that as well. So it makes it a little bit more dynamic. And honestly, like it's a testament to the platform
Yeah.
itself. Is platforms like Zoom, and I think it's like Jitsu or something like that, which is the other counterpart to it. They allow you to share your screen, and they allow you to do these sort of dynamic interactive things. So I basically took that upon myself to add that to the comedy. So like those little video segments are kind of like what you would see on the Daily Show,
Right.
where he would like criticize a politician for an interview they had, and they said something ridiculous, and then he would stop and make a joke about it. It's doing stuff like that, which I wouldn't normally get to do in a
Right.
regular stand-up context. So in that term, it's a little bit different than that. But hearing the audience laugh and react to things is it is cool, and it has changed my timing a little bit, because I think with these Zoom meetings, there's just a little bit of a delay. Like the delay might just be like 1 or 2 seconds
Yeah.
before you hear the laughter, right? And it's like you kind of have to time yourself.
Right. Right.
You can't like jump to the next thing too quickly. So it is a little bit different, and it's like I gotta keep reminding myself.
Yeah, you're like, why are you laughing at the beginning of this joke? I haven't said anything, and then you're like, oh, they're laughing at the last.
Laughing at the, like, right, yeah, and you're like, okay, pause, wait an extra second. Yeah,
Let's talk about one thing I want to ask about the live show is you said one of the things you're doing is you're basically asking people questions from. You became a citizen of the United States in December.
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah. So
Yeah.
You're asking people questions from the study book, right? For the exam. So what I asked before we came on, I asked Krish to maybe dig out a couple, because I'd like to take a couple of these, because I was always good at like history and civics and stuff like that. But I'm guessing I'm probably going to bomb this horribly. But maybe ask me. Let's go over a couple just to kind of see what kind of stuff is in there.
So so this is the book it's called Learn About the United States. That's the book that they give you. So you have to answer 6 out of 10 questions correctly to pass the test. So I'll start with we'll start with something a little little easy, and then we'll
George Washington.
Yeah, that's the easiest one. Let's. I'm trying to find a pretty nice and easy one. This one I think is kind of an easy one. What ocean is on the east coast of the United States?
Oh, that's the Atlantic Ocean.
That is correct. That is correct.
Do they do that? Do they sort of like start you off nice and easy, and then they're like, you know?
They kind of did that with me. They asked me like I think the first question they asked me was they asked you about the senators, who your senators were, which I had to double check. Is Pat Toomey and Bob Casey. If you didn't, if you weren't sure, and then they kind of got into the rest of it. Not to brag, but I got all 6 correctly.
Nice.
6 in a row. So. All right, so okay, who was the president during the Great Depression and World War II?
Oh, Franklin Roosevelt.
Yes, that is correct. Let's see. I might ramp up the. Oh, this one gets a little tricky. Name one U.S. territory.
Oh, Puerto Rico.
Yep. I think that's the big one. So you're 3 for 3 so far.
I did in high school. I did win a VFW, history exam kind of a thing. So, I'm up on these kinds of things.
Yeah. Okay. There are 4 amendments to the Constitution about who can vote. Describe one of them.
You want the most recent, right? You don't want me to go back to like 1840 and because I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. 18 years old.
Yep.
See, you overthink that stuff because you're like,
you do.
Well, oh my God, what is it? Like you have to have like a brown horse, or because who knows when it was.
Yeah, you gotta make sure you eat 2 square meals a day.
Right.
You never know.
What do you think about? So you went through this. So if I were to, granted, you have the benefit of living here, so you learn things as you go. So for me to say, like, if I went to India, like I couldn't pass one. I would be able to answer one probably question. About government and history. Of that country, but we expect as Americans a lot of times we expect other people to know all of our shit. So it's really kind of weird. It's just really there's this double standard, I think.
Yeah, there is. And last year I got to go back to India. My ex-wife and I went on our honeymoon together, and we went to India, and it was very interesting because I did get to learn a little bit more about just the state of politics there, and sort of like how it works. And um, it's strange because I kind of knew this about Europe, but I didn't realize this about India. But like conservatism all around the world is vastly different than
Right.
conservatism in America, right? Like the conservatives in UK are really more like they're like Nixon, like, and
Right.
Nixon, it's like Nixon would be a liberal considered. He would be considered a liberal in today's standards. Well, it's kind of the same thing in India, where the lines start to get blurred about like what conservatism and liberalism is. The religious fundamentalism still exists within conservatives, right? But like the leader there in India is he, like I kept getting these mixed signals. There's some people that just viscerally hate the guy, and there's some people that really love him. But then there's this other thing in the middle where he's like, yeah, he's trying, he's doing his best, and if you look at it, that's kind of what it is this guy is trying to put forth a bunch of ideas that nobody's ever put forth before for like a billion people,
Mhm.
but his execution kind of sucks.
Right.
Like he tried to get rid of corruption, so he got rid of he demonetized two of the larger bills in India. I think that was one of the first things he did when he came into power, and it completely screwed over middle class and poor people when India is a primarily cash-based business
Mhm.
and not everybody has access to a bank. So it's like, it's an oversight, and it's like you should have thought about that. Like that is but when I come over here, nobody knows that information. Like
Right.
that is just new information that when I say that, um, the only thing they kind of know about Modi is, oh well, somebody said he was a fascist in something, so that's what I'm going to go with. And I'm like, I don't know if this guy's like a totalitarian leader,
Yeah.
Like I kind of feel like he is somebody that's doing his best, but he's falling into the trappings of becoming a politician. Like
Right.
that's kind of what's happening to him. I don't agree with him all the time.
Mhm.
That there's a big thing actually speaking of the citizenship stuff, is like there is a big thing going on with the citizenship in India, and I'm not fully up on the details of exactly what's going on, but I do know that the Conservative Party has run its mouth quite a bit, and is stirring up a bunch of controversy about
Right.
Hindus automatically getting citizenship, but the Muslims are not, and
Oh.
and it's just like that's the thing is he hasn't come out and said anything about it definitively. Like the law isn't saying that Hindus automatically become citizens and Muslims don't, but the political party is. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
one of those things where it's just like, man, I wish this dude would say something against his own party. Like he would push back against his party and just be like, "Shut up,
Right.
you guys are stirring up nonsense for no." But he doesn't
Yeah.
because he falls into the trappings of being a politician. And even then, it's like, what do you do with a country of 1.3 billion people where there is a large number of people in your country that kind of that fall out of the paperwork world,
Right.
right? They don't have access to the internet or government services or hospitals and all of these modern conveniences that we're all enjoying. So how do you kind of incorporate them into a system so you have an accurate census, so you know where people need help? It's really hard, and then you try to do something,
Right.
and it kind of blows up in your face one way or the other. So it's really difficult. And but even me as somebody that has paid attention to politics here in the States, I when I went to India, it was kind of like, holy crap, I'm learning this whole new
Yeah.
thing. And it was very eye opening, and kind of made me think a little bit more and push my thoughts and beliefs a little bit more, to try to understand, like, okay, things in the United States might not be the same as everywhere else, and I think we need to be a little bit more aware of that.
Right.
We need to have a little bit more nuance when we approach things like global affairs and foreign policy and things of that sort.
Yeah. And it's. I mean, I don't. I feel like we're under more of a totalitarian government than other countries. I mean, we've got. I mean, we've got a leader who just makes the shit up as he goes along. I mean, he just refuses to be wrong. That's this whole COVID thing is so funny. I mean, you've got some of the best medical minds in the world working on this, and you're going to tell people to do a to have a pine sol spritzer every morning to get rid of the virus. So it's I don't know. It's just the weird times we're living in. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
does Trump give you much in the way of it sounds like you definitely do more of a global look at things, and maybe you don't get into as much as like individual sort of individual people and individual policies and so forth. But do you address sort of the administration, Trump, in your act when you're
Not in stand up. There was just so many people talking about it, and
Yeah.
and the way that I view Trump is, I think he's a symptom of a much larger disease. So
Yeah.
I'd rather go after the disease itself. So that's kind of why I talk about and criticize things like capitalism or this for-profit government system that we have, and how corporations are treating their workers. To me, those are more evergreen ideologies, that and it's stuff that I believe in.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of like I've had a couple jokes on the road here and there, whenever I'm touring, and somebody will call out his name, or somebody will say like "Go Bernie" or whatever, and
Right.
I riff a little bit here and there, but nothing is really planned. But I mean I do pay attention to some of the things he says. I fall. I end up getting caught up in sort of the ideology end of things, that
Right.
when he says something ridiculous, I miss it, and then I catch it on Twitter, and then I
Right.
gotta like contact my buddy and be like, so wait, what is this? What is this thing about?
Yeah.
And then I got to get the story from kind of like secondhand or anything. But it's like the whole the disinfectant thing, when that was going around, I was like, this can't be
Right.
real. I get that, like, this administration is satire in real life,
Right.
which is what I'm upset about, is like he's ruined satire,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Uh, but I was just like, this is nobody's gonna say that. That's crazy.
Right.
And then I went and watched the clip, and I was like, that's kind of what he like. This is crazy,
Right.
And it's just like, I don't know how to rationalize it, but if you look at him, he's a guy that got a, what was it, like a $10 million loan or something from his dad to start
Yeah.
his business. And then he's never really had to work for a whole lot. He's
He's
bankrupted a
gone
whole lot of
bust
business.
1,000 times, and he's gone bust. Somehow
Yeah.
made money
Yeah.
on these deals, while his
Right.
workers end up suffering.
Which to me, I look at that and I go, how many other people have done that?
Yeah.
Right? That
Right.
aren't Donald Trump, that kind of did it quietly
Right.
and got away
You
with
don't
it.
brag. Yeah, they didn't brag about it afterwards.
Right. But then when you kind of look at it, the only thing he has that he has, and it's kind of in some way, it's like this evil genius move, where the only thing that he has that's of value is his name. And then he sells his name to things.
Right.
And then he makes billions of dollars based on that.
Right.
Right? Which is like, I wish I could do that. I wish I could put my name on a T-shirt and then everybody just purchases it, right? If I put my name on like a building,
Right.
right? Like if I graffitied Krish Mohan on a building, everybody's like, yeah, that's a multi-billion. Like that would be amazing, Like,
Yeah.
but he's just this sad, lonely old man who. There's also a couple reports where it's like, yeah, the reason why he's like as crazy as he is because he's an old man who's a narcissist, who's not like cognitively all there,
Yeah.
but is doing a bunch of amphetamines to keep himself going.
Right.
Right? Like there's like a couple stories where it's like, look at these diet pills he's taking. It's basically speed. And and then like the Matt Taibbi, who's a journalist, was talking about this in one of his interviews,
Yeah, I
and
love
he like mentioned, he was like, you can tell when he's taking his diet pills versus when he's not, because of how bombastic he is on stage. And that's kind of his thing, is that
Right.
he's just this bombastic person, but he encapsulates like everything about American exceptionalism,
Right.
Like he's this old, like
Right.
like he's balding. He doesn't look well. Like he doesn't look healthy. I don't think his family really cares for him. But he
Right.
comes out and he's like, I'm the best, and everybody's like, yeah, that guy is the best, right? It's just like everything about American exceptionalism, all wrapped up in just like
Right.
a nice suit, you know.
It's like when your grandfather says something completely, ridiculous at Thanksgiving. It's like, okay, Grandpa.
Right. Yeah, because it's just like it's one of those things where I've been doing like a bunch of research on narcissism for the last few years just to try to understand it, and even the experts of narcissism don't fully understand narcissism, right? Personality disorders are really, really difficult to work with, but this dude is difficult to get them to see that they're narcissists, right? Like that's kind of the challenge. So it is kind of like your grandpa at Thanksgiving. You're not going to convince your grandpa at Thanksgiving that Bill Gates isn't trying to poison his blood with nanites and trace them everywhere. Like that's just a thing that grandpas believed since like the car phone was invented. Right. And it's just like, all right, well that's a crazy thing grandpa says, and he's got some weird thoughts about black people too. It's like we've all tried. We brought our black friend to Thanksgiving in 2002, and that was a disaster. And then we spent like all of 2003 apologizing to our black friends. Like it's just like after a certain point, you're like, yeah, grandpa's not changing anytime soon.
Right.
I think it's the same thing with Trump. Is like there are certain things where I see people on the left have this like, oh my God, can you believe that this is what he said? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of do, because if you paid attention to the last 30 years of Donald Trump just saying anything, it's just the craziest bombastic things that will get him the most amount of press. Right. That's really it, because his name is what's worth money. So if he can sell his name by saying something bombastic, then he wins.
Right.
So to me, it's just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not shocking to me that he says something wildly racist.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the thing that he does.
Unfortunately, at some point you got to take Grandpa's keys away so he doesn't run somebody down. But so that's our chance here in a few months, is to take the keys away from Grandpa before he really does some damage. So anyway, Krish, we thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed myself. Absolutely. And we're going to put, Jason will put the links up, and we're going to put them in the comments, but you can catch this Friday at 9 p.m. Krish Mohan is doing his virtual stand-up special. He kind of writes it on the fly, right? It's about 70% new material every show, right? It kind of dictates what's going on. So you want to check that out, and then you'll want to get his new record. How old am I? His new album. Actually, I am old enough to say record. Politely,
I kind of like that you're saying record.
Thank you. Politely, because in comedy, right? That's the whole thing. Is you listen to the big LPs, in the basement. Politely Angry, set for June 1st release, and we're going to put all that information in the information below. Krish, thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck with the show and good luck with the record.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. And this has been the Pittsburgh Current Podcast. We will see you out on in your inbox, again, not on the streets, but in your inbox on Tuesday. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
Giving Pittsburgh a better alternative. Giving Pittsburgh a better alternative. Yeah.